Hey everyone, it's Steve from the garden. Well, the time has finally come when I can start getting my warm season plants in, like my tomatoes and peppers and like summer squashes and all that, into the garden. So our nighttime temperatures are now going to stay in the mid-50s or warmer. And I haven't checked the soil yet today, but when I checked it previously, it was at like 60 degrees, which is warm enough for me to get like tomatoes in. But before I can plant anything, I need to do a little bit of maintenance first. So let's take a quick look at that. You can see I have quite a few weeds in this bed. So I'm going to knock them out with the stirrer pole before I do any planting. But we'll also go and just double check what the soil temperature is currently. So as you can see right now, the soil is around 80 degrees. That's definitely warm enough for tomatoes and peppers. The stirrer pole makes pretty quick work of these little weeds that grow up in here. I just gotta be careful I don't end up nicking the drip tape too much, so that I end up getting a hole in there. Now you can also see that, I do have my drip tape all set up for this bed. I did that a couple of weeks ago, so everything was ready to go once the temperatures got to a point where it was safe to plant. First tomato I'm going to put in is going to be a San Marzano. This is a traditional Italian paste tomato. These are an indeterminate. A couple of weeks ago I had some bananas that went over, so I dug down deep and put like parts of whole banana in there. And I'm going to just plant the new plant here. I'm going to go and put it right between two emitters. And a little stick in the ground to let me know where the banana was. Banana will provide a little bit of nutrients and some potassium. One thing I did this year a little bit differently than previous years is I waited a little bit longer before I started my tomato seeds, so I wouldn't end up with like a giant plant at planting time. I'm really glad I did that. When they get too tall, it gets hard to get them in and out of the grow shelves. Plus, you end up having to bury them, even deeper to, give them a better chance so they don't get too leggy. And it helped also this year that, since I'm planting about a week later than I expected, by starting the tomatoes a little bit later, again, they didn't get quite as tall. But there's pretty good height on them at this point. I'm just going to break off some of the outer branches, and I can bury it right between two of the emitters. Once it gets tall enough, I will start using tomato clips to bring it up the trellis. Another tomato variety I'm growing this year is called Torringina. This is similar to Sun Gold, except they don't crack quite as easily as Sun Gold does. Like Sun Gold, turn your back on them and they'll split open on you. So these get quite tall. So I'm using a 10-foot electrical metal conduit as my trellis, and then I can just kind of tie it up to the pole as it moves up, and I will single stem these until they get pretty tall. And I'm just going to break off a few of these lower branches here and go ahead and bury that in there, and then later on I'll come back. Now, once I have all the plants in the ground for today, I'll go ahead and turn on the drip system so they can get some water. Now I have 3 different trellising systems I use, depending on the type of plant it is. So for the San Marzanos and the speckled Roman, which are both paste tomatoes, indeterminates, I'm going to use the cattle panel trellis for those. For the really quick growing tomatoes, like the Torringina, and I have one called Britain's Breakfast. Those are like small cherry or grape tomatoes. I'm going to just run them up on the 10-foot electrical metal conduits. But for the determinate plants, which don't get as tall, but they do get really bushy, I'm going to use a Florida weave system. So in the spot right here, this is going to be summer pick. And these 2 spots here are going to be red snapper. And that's what I got here in my hand. So for these, because I'm going to be using a Florida weave, I want to just place them right between the poles. And I got plenty of space between each pole so that they can really bush out without being crowded together. So I'm just going to do one plant between each pole. Because these are determinants, I do not single stem these. I just let them bush. Now on this side of the bed is where I'm planting my jalapenos. I have another bed I'm going to be planting the rest of the peppers in. So with the jalapenos, I'm simply going to do like a staggered planting with them. These two plants right here, these were started much earlier. I'm trying that system out versus trying to like overwinter some peppers. I simply started these in like mid-February, where these I started more like the beginning of March or mid-March. So these I just plant so that we have good spacing between each pepper, and because the tomatoes on the other side of the trellis, they won't really interfere with the peppers either. Now any plants that have like little suckers growing on them that are indeterminates, I just go ahead and peel those out so they don't start growing a new branch. A week has gone by since I planted all the tomatoes and peppers and other warm season things. So you can see here, I got the Florida weave set up on these fresh salsa tomatoes. And it wraps around, goes to the summer pick, and then over to the red snapper. These are the speckled Romans. Like this one, it was close enough I could just kind of use a tomato clip to get it onto the string, to get it up going toward the trellis. Now for these other ones, like these are the speckled Romans, and all those down that way are the San Marzanos. So what I did is I simply tied strings to the trellis, used a tomato clip to get it kind of trained up so that as it grows, it'll grow up toward the trellis, and then as it gets big I can start, attaching it to the trellis directly. So I did that with all the tomatoes that are the indeterminates for the paste tomatoes. For the Britain's breakfast and the Torrangina, these I tied directly to the 10-foot pole so that as they keep growing, I will keep tying them up and keep them organized that way. And I will keep these single stemmed until they get, 3-4 feet tall. Then I might potentially do a double stem on those. The peppers are doing well. Now this pepper, I did have to use like a little metal rod to kind of attach it to keep it upright. I may end up getting like those tomato cages and put the tomato cages around these and use them as pepper cages. And these ones I think need like some worm castings in them to help green them up a little bit more. But you can see there are peppers growing on those. For all the remaining peppers, like this is mostly like the paprikas. And then we get into like the Santa Fe's, those ones that are kind of a pale yellow. Those will go from pale yellow to like an orange and into a red. Then we got cayennes. And these like really short ones, these are habanados. These are a heatless habanero. And then here and here, those are a yellow bell pepper called Early Sensation. Another round of basil. And I got those candy onions that were saved from seed. And because I had like this gap here in the middle, I decided to just put some flowers in here. That'll bring in some pollinators and add some color to the garden area. So that's feathered celosia, and then we got purple echinacea. Then in this bed we got the first round of sweet corn I started, which I started in the house. Now this also needs like another shot of nitrogen and probably some worm castings, and then needs to be covered with some mulch to help retain moisture. That's the second round of sweet corn. And then in the center where I had like a gap between the first and second round, I put some zinnias in here to kind of fill the gap, add some color, and then they'll bring in some pollinators too. At the same time, I planted the pre-started corn from the house into the garden. I also direct seeded another round of corn right in this spot here, which is roughly about 6 or 7 feet long. And so this is starting to come up. Now, because I didn't pre-start this in the house, you end up like getting some gaps sometimes. So like here I have some corn right on this side, but there's no matching companion on this side. So what I'll do is, in this spot here that's got 3 plants, I can transplant one of these and fill in that empty gap. Now next weekend I will start the second round of direct seeded corn, and then 2 weeks after that I'll start the third round, and that'll carry me through the end of the season. I also wanted to give you a quick look at the potatoes. So here we got the root pouches, the potato plants growing up, meeting the trellis system, which is the PVC pipe with the wire fencing on it, and they're starting to grow up through that wire fencing. Now that the plants are reaching the top, I can kind of come in, push these plants in, and now keep these stems going up through the trellis system so that they don't flop all over the place here. A few of the plants are starting to produce flowers, and that usually indicates that they're starting to produce tubers underneath the ground. So with this, I have the warm season stuff all pretty much planted, except I do have some zinnias that I need to put up in front. We had rain today, which is the day I probably would have done it, but we had like 6 hours of rain, so it's gonna have to wait maybe a few days for it to kind of dry out a little bit up there before I go in and get that finished off. If you have any questions, go ahead and leave a comment down below and I'll do my best to answer them. And until next time, I hope you enjoyed, got something out of this, and we'll see you on the next one.